I'll make a couple comments real quick, following up on what Dave said, that the support and the things that they've done for Landon Light's unbelievable. And I know my two boys had a chance to meet Landon through Cheyenne basketball. And the things that Dave, his program, our marketing department have done have been outstanding. So kudos to all those people that have been in support, and to the Solberg family as well. But, a couple comments about last week. I think some things that just jumped off the page to me. We weren't as sharp as we probably been the previous 2 weeks, and is that just because we weren't ready to go? I thought we had a good week of practice leading into the game. Maybe we had some. It's hard to get up every week, and it's hard to make every game the most important one, and probably a great learning experience for some of our younger players, some of our less experienced players. But I felt offensively, really the second and third quarter, we struggled to convert third downs. The things that I said after the game, every second down of every series, it was 2nd and 9 or greater. And that's just not a good start to series. And, probably get into more into numbers at some point, but I don't think that's a great way to get the ball moving. And we need to do a better job, be more efficient on early downs. And then we struggled to convert a couple third downs in those series or in those quarters as well. I think maybe only 2 of 6, 2 of 7. The first and fourth quarters were our best quarters. So, there's things that we can continue to improve upon. Some protection issues. I don't think we had all 11 players on the same page on some of the run plays. We mis-ID'd some things. We just missed some blocks. We're unable to finish, and that's going to be the key word this week going into practice this afternoon is finish. On the defensive side, we had our hands on I don't know how many footballs. We need to finish with the football occasionally. We've hit a rut. We've struggled to create some takeaways, and we need to do a better job of that. They're out there. We just need to catch the football at times, and our kids aren't stressed about it, but they know it's a big part of the equation for us to be successful. With that being said, there's a lot of positives as well. You run for over 200 yards again. You win 22-0. You hold Missouri State probably at about 30% conversion on third down. They have 25 yards rushing. You have pressure on the quarterback. Our quarterback had 1 sack for -1 yard. So again, a scramble deal where it wasn't really a sack. He was 21 of 31, had a rushing touchdown. A lot of positives out there. I still think our quarterback does an unbelievable job of having confidence and seeing the big picture and knowing what people are getting into and understanding defense. I had a chance to sit with him this morning for about an hour and a half, and he's as sharp as a quarterback as we've had, and only getting more and more comfortable in his role. This week, big game. It's the only one we have this week, so we got to make sure we have a good week of practice. Our kids are excited about it. They know South Dakota State's a good football team, a very familiar opponent. You watch them on film, and I've had a chance this morning to buzz through a couple, 3, 4 of their games. Outstanding on offense. They have some great weapons. The quarterback, a young quarterback, has playmaking ability, can run the football, can deliver it. Great receivers, tailbacks. They're as deep as anybody out there. Pierre Strong's as good a back as we've seen. Reminds you a lot of Illinois State and the depth they had at running back. Offensive line is really solid. Coach Eck does a great job with that group, and it's going to be a big challenge for Code Green and the defensive staff to come up with a plan, because they're going to stretch you and try to attack all 4 corners of the field. On defense, it starts with their Mike linebacker, Christian Roseboom. As good a football player as there is probably on FCS as far as on the defensive side. They're playing similar to us, 7, 8 different guys on the defensive line and trying to stay fresh. And they have some newer faces in the back end, but very athletic. We're familiar with a lot of the names that they have on their roster because our 2 schools compete against one another quite often in the recruiting arena. So they do a really good job. And then, of course, Chase Vinatieri is as good a kicker that's out there right now. So all 3 phases, we're going to have to play really well to be able to hang in there and try to find a way to win. With that, I'm going to open it up for questions.
What's your tone, your approach, your style here after facing a little bit more adversity than maybe you have in weeks past with your coaching staff and the players as well?
My tone is that we need to go about our business as we did the last 6 weeks and as we've done it the last 6 years. I think we have a good process in set in place for us right now in preparation. I think the things that you saw on Saturday we can continue to improve upon. I don't think there was anything as far as that can't be fixed with practice, and so we're excited to get back to practice. I've seen a bunch of guys around the facility watching film already. They know that we didn't play up to Bison expectations, but at the same time, it was excited about a 22-0 win.
How did Zach come out, and how did you come out in general health-wise?
Zach's still waiting on the final diagnosis. He won't be available this week, I'm sure, but feel like we're relatively healthy. Didn't have anything significant after the game that I've heard of yet. Still waiting on a couple things. Derek Tuska did not play, of course, and that was more my call right there. I think Derek thought he could have played, but we still had – after this one, we still have 5 more regular season games, and I was trying to look out for longevity. I knew we had some young kids that could step in and play for us, and I can't say enough about Jake Cava and Will Mostart getting some reps. Will was in there in the second series of the game, and I think that says a lot about the trust that Coach Williams has in a young guy like him.
Matt, when you heard game day was announced to come to Brookings, what were your thoughts on adding another layer of hype, intrigue to the game on Saturday?
That I'm really excited to get to practice today and just take care of our business. I'll let them worry about game day. But we're going to try to go about it as status quo, Dom. Not going to make it any more than what it is. We don't need to get overly excited right now. We know it's a really good football team, and I think if we start looking ahead to Saturday, then we're going to miss a bunch of opportunities to get better during the course of the week.
Will you anticipate you guys having any role in that stuff, the game day stuff?
No, I don't anticipate being involved at all right at this point.
Was it to have a game like that where you did face some adversity, especially going into the rivalry game this week?
I think anytime you get to play a game, especially with a bunch of young kids or relatively inexperienced kids, there's a huge advantage just getting game reps under your belt. So I think us just continuing to learn and to grow as football players and as a coaching staff, I think that's where the value is. I don't know if there was a ton of adversity during the course of the game. We weren't effective on early downs. We'll get that solved, but at the same time, I don't think our defensive kids ever felt like that Missouri State was ever going to score. So I think we knew if they didn't score, we were probably going to win.
There were a couple times when Trey fired it out to the slot when the offensive line was run blocking. Is the RPO playbook, the general playbook, kind of expanding for him as time goes on?
There'll be a few of them in there. That's not necessarily who we are, but if you're going to leave the slot area receiver uncovered, we're going to take the easy access throw. Again, it goes back to, you've heard me say it, we're going to make people defend the entire football field.
Since you got here, where have you seen NDSU make its biggest leaps? Is it recruiting? They're just finding better players to talent on the field. Where are you seeing the biggest improvement from 2014 to what you'll see Saturday?
I think they continue to do a good job recruiting. And like I said before, we're familiar with a lot of the kids, and they're familiar with a lot of ours because of recruiting. But I think that's number one. Settling down and having a system. I think for a couple years there, they were under center. And that probably played into our hands a little bit. So now all of a sudden they're getting into a little bit more of the quarterback run game and forcing you to have to defend a lot of different looks, a lot of different run plays, and then the +1 and RPO game create a whole other issue themselves.
Describe the recruiting process for Costner and Ching. How'd you get them?
Costner, we just talked, Costner's a walk-on, of course, and I think Costner saw the value that he was going to give NDSU, and I think we talked at length about the number of examples that we have of young men that have come here as walk-ons and then ultimately earned scholarship. Costner, and I think Costner had an unbelievable, and still does to this day, relationship with Tyler Roll, who was his primary recruiter when Costner was a tight end fullback.
He's playing probably a lot sooner than you expect and in a different position, too.
He is, the move was made in spring for him to go to defensive line, and part of it was just the effect of Jim Kramer had on him. All of a sudden, he came in here at 230, and before you knew it, he was 280, but still showed the athleticism. I had the chance to see him every day last year as he was helping us out on scout team. He's always been a huge part of it, and so trying to find a place where he can help us. D-line's a place where we play 7-8 different players, and we needed some more depth this year, and he's fit in really well, and starting every game, he's getting more and more comfortable in his new role.
Does Gibbs stress you in maybe different ways than Christian did?
Probably a little bit more with his feet. I think, but now you go back early, and I'm thinking back to 2016, early. I think they used to use a lot of quarterback run game. And the older Christian became, less quarterback run game, more RPO, more ride to throw versus ride to run. And I see some of the early Christian run game still. But he still has a big arm and got great receivers. You start talking about Cade. He's as good a receiver that's out there that we may see individually all year.
Offensively, do they look much different?
Not at this point, but I anticipate there's some things that they got ready for us. There'll be some openers that'll stress us if it's empty, if it's unbalanced. That's one of the things we haven't seen all year is unbalanced, but their history has shown that they'll jump into some unbalanced or some X-off. A lot of moving pieces. You'll see FIB motion back to the field. I'm sure that's trying to attack or try to get certain personnel like number 42 buried in the boundary where he can't be as effective.
How did you watch the Minnesota game to start the season with them, and what did you take out of that?
I watched the entire thing with Trey Lance this morning down in the team room. Really good football team, physical. We were watching the offensive Minnesota offense and South Dakota State's defense, but very efficient. They don't do a lot, but what they do really well. Quarters team, a little bit of three buzz. There's a lot of similarities defensively between South Dakota State and NDSU, and it's going to be a chess match, I'm sure, on Saturday.
Value of that, of you and Trey spending that time together, first of all, but then also going through a game like that together. What do you kind of learn about him, and what are you impressed with what he gets from it when you're watching him?
I think my first thing is just to see where his learning curve is at. I try to sit with him a little bit every week. Today was probably a little bit longer. He was probably ready for me to go. He never gave me the clicker, though. He was always in charge. So he's smart in that aspect. But it was good, just trying to talk to him about structure, and safety depth, safety alignment, some things that I think are tells by how they're aligning to certain formations, and can we dictate what coverage they're going to be in? Can we manipulate leverage based on motion or trade and shifts? So just trying to help him out any way I can, because there are some similarities between their defense and ours.
You guys get everybody's best shot every week. You always talk about that. You're always the target for every team you play. Is this different for you guys this week because you know that South Dakota State is a really good program and a really good team, and they beat you in the last few years? Is there a different feel around your team this week?
I'm sure there is. I'm not going to probably try to build it up any more than it already is. I think we just need to go through our week and get our work done. The energy and the excitement for the game will happen and will grow daily as we get closer and closer. For me to stand up in meeting today and hoot and holler, I think there's no reason for us to get excited on Monday. We have plenty of work to do right now.
You have a younger team this year, so is that a concern that or do you need who's going to step up on the team?
That's always a concern right now when we have an inexperienced team. Again, for some of our guys, it'll be only the seventh game they've ever played, and but at the same thought process, it's the reason why they came to NDSU, is so they could play in games like this.
Brookings only an hour away from Marshall, where Trey's from. What have you said to him about how important this game is for his community? And
haven't talked about it at all. Not going to put any more on that young man's plate than making sure he gets us in the right call and sees the defense like he needs to.
Is the best linebacking core that you've seen from what they've been able to do with South Dakota State this year?
I think it is. I mean, they've shown to play about four different linebackers, and both Christian, the backhouse kid, are veteran players for them. Can play. They're going to keep Roseboom in the box, of course, but backhouse has played Sam and Will, which shows that he has that upper class experience where he can play multiple spots, and they can bring some other kids to shore up that will position. But they're athletic. They do a nice job. Levi Brown, young man from Minneapolis, from the Minneapolis area, has also played some slot area defender. And they got some talented kids, and they should. They got Coach Stig does a great job down there, and they've got a great product.
With game day coming, the game wasn't sold out. Now it is. The idea being that a lot of those folks are Bison fans. It's a short-ish drive. How much does a big road crowd kind of help you guys, energize you guys? I mean, what is it like playing in front of a lot of Bison fans but not in Fargo?
I don't know if that'll affect us any at all. I mean, I'm sure our kids will be really appreciative of it. I know family and friends and everyone's going to try to be there the best they can. But I think when it comes right down to it, when we get there Saturday, it's going to happen between the white lines. And the fact that it's a sold-out crowd tells you probably the value of the Bison logo.
To talk about emotions and playing within the rules or anything this week, does any of that concern you with the rivalry?
Not as much, because I think it's something we talk about routinely. UC Davis, I think we had 9 penalties. This week we had 7. We've already addressed that a little bit. We'll continue to address it. The expectations are we handle ourselves appropriately all the time. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. And so I'm not going to make it any bigger deal than it already is. But, we got to act like Bison.
Biggest difference, if there is any, between Pierre Strong and James Robinson when you look at each of them?
There's not much of a difference. It's probably why the comparison jumped out at me. Both are excellent, big physical backs. They both like to run that stretch play where they can stretch you horizontally and then try to puncture it straight downhill and get north and south, and they can break tackles. And probably South Dakota State has a little bit better depth. Is it C.J. Wilson, number 8? The other tailback they have is a good. Mikey Daniels, young man from Brookings right there. Big, more physical downhill back, but they got some really good depth back there.
To the semifinal tape, you watched that from last year, or not so much with a different quarterback for them?
I buzzed through it real quick. I probably only watched the first 2.5 quarters, 3 quarters, just thinking that once we're up by 21, they probably it's not indicative of who they really were.
Last week about showing some cut-ups of trap games. Is there anything you're showing the team this week outside of normal film, normal prep, or do you kind of leave all of that to your senior captains and that kind of stuff?
No, there's not going to be any. We're trying not to make it any more than what it is. It's the biggest game because it's the only one of the week. It's the next one, and probably not going to pull out anything as far as old film or revenge. We just need to. We said it, we're inexperienced. We got to worry about just us right now, and that's been my message all along. Is we're first team that'll beat us will be ourselves.
Adam Cofield's maybe a little bit underrated, not necessarily spoken the way that like maybe a Bruce or a Lance was spoken about, but every week production.
Maybe, but it's still really only his first year of being in the limelight, if you will. I mean, he followed or played behind Lance and Bruce for a couple years, and he's kind of had a bigger role for 7 games now. I think as he continues to be consistent and make plays for us, people will start to give him the recognition he needs. But if you know Adam's Mr. Stoneface. He ain't going to say much. He's not going to have many reactions. Ryan, I see the smile over there. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Adam doesn't need to be patted on the back a whole bunch. He's a self-motivated individual. I will say this. He's worked extremely hard and his feet have improved unbelievable. His ability to make cuts, his ability not to get tackled in the hole has really helped his game elevate to another level.
Following on that question, does Trevor Height get enough credit for the job he's done?
He's playing with a lot of confidence right now. To stand back there, we've brought a little bit of pressure this week, and so there was probably 6, 7 guys bearing down, and to fair catch it, being surrounded by opponents' jerseys, he's done a really good job. Every time the ball hits the ground on a punt, it's 17 yards on average. And so you think he's saving us 2 first downs every time he fair catches it. But more importantly, it's the number one job he has, and he knows it has to be our ball at the end of the snap. And he's doing a great job, and we're getting a lot of extra first downs out of him right now, and we'll continue. That group, led by Cody Morgan, has a lot of pride in what they're doing. And I hope, knock on wood, our best is yet to come with that punt D group.